What's up, world? We are back in the shop today with the 2018 Ford Edge Sport, and we're going to be looking at a critical maintenance item and going ahead and performing a transmission fluid change on the Ford Edge. The 2018 Ford Edge Sport is equipped with a 6F50 6-speed automatic transmission. And so before we get started, let's go over a few critical tools that you're going to need, and some of these are absolute necessities, and a couple of these are going to be options for you. So for this application, I have chosen to use the Motorcraft LV automatic transmission fluid, and I just picked this up, and it is a total of 5 quarts. And so this should be plenty to get the job done for this. Next up, I have just got a small 1/4-inch drive ratchet and a socket set with an extension. And as we go along, I'll go ahead and let you know exactly what size sockets you're going to need for this. And next up, I want to include a 3/8 ratchet, and that could be an optional item. The only reason why I say include a 3/8 ratchet with a deep well socket is we're going to remove the engine cover to give us a little bit of extra room as we get underneath the hood. Next up, I've just gone ahead and grabbed some big box store nitrile gloves for a little bit of protection, and we're going to need something to clean up any messes, spills, drips, anything like that. The other thing that you will definitely need that is not up here is you're going to need some sort of good drain pan, and also you're going to need a way to elevate the vehicle. So this can be done on ramps, jack stands, anything like that. We just happen to have the lift in here, so that way it'll give you a good vantage point underneath the vehicle. So that's really about all the basics that we're going to need. So let's get started. So like I said, first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this engine cover, and it is just a 10mm deep well, and so there is just one nut and one bolt that holds that engine cover on. So we're going to go ahead and get that out of the way to make a little bit of room over here. And like I said about the 3/8 ratchet, I'm just going to use an electric ratchet, but you can obviously do this with the hand ratchet. This is just going to speed up the process. So next up on the driver's side, right in front of the battery, is the air filter housing. And all we need to do is loosen up these 2 hose clamps. So 1 and 2. So let's get those loosened up so that we can remove these boots off of the end where they mount up to the air filter housing. And just for reference, those hose clamps are a 7mm, or you can also use just a flat blade screwdriver. Next up, we want to undo these clips that hold the air filter housing top on. And at that point, we should be able to just pull this top off. So this top is going to tip out from the outer fender out this direction. So we're going to pull it up, and then we're going to pull it to the driver's side like so, because those ears go underneath some little hold downs. But if we just pull it, it'll pop right out. Go ahead and pull your air filter out. Now, just to be safe and to make a little bit of extra room here, I just don't want to damage this IAT sensor or inlet air temperature sensor. So on the front, you can see that there is a very small gap right there. And so all you need is a pick, and you're going to push in on it, and it'll pop right out. And so I'm using a fairly large pick, but again, you just push it in there, it'll release, and it'll come right out. So I'm just going to take this plug and kind of tuck it up towards the headlight there to make sure that we don't damage anything. Get this out of the way. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and remove these 2 screws that go down to the air box. This is basically the air inlet, and those are also 7mm. At that point, we should be able to just pull the entire lower airbox assembly up out of the rubber isolators. Like so. Now this box has been out before, but this box has never been out in your particular vehicle. It may be pretty tough to get these little nubs out of those isolators down there. So just make sure that you pay attention to that, because it could be kind of tough to get it out. And underneath where we removed that lower airbox assembly, this is our transmission. So we can see our transmission linkage over here. And the 6F50 in the Ford Edge does actually have a real fill cap with a dipstick. And make sure that you note that there is an arrow that points to the front of the vehicle. So when this goes back in and you check your fluid level, make sure that that arrow is always pointing towards the front of the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out really quick, and we're going to check the level on it just to be safe before we drain anything out. And that is what it looks like before we wiped anything down. I'm going to go ahead and wipe it. Just put it back in just like we would if we were checking oil. Just to kind of be safe, make sure we're getting an accurate measurement here. All this wiped down as much as I can. And so that is our level. And we can see that that fluid's a little bit dark at 45,000 miles. Now let's get the Ford Edge up in the air. Moving from the front of the vehicle towards the back, over on the driver's side is going to be this splash shield. And so what you're going to need to do is this push pin for this job will need to be remove. What you can do is basically just get a flat blade screwdriver, go behind it, and once this centerpiece starts coming down, what I found easiest is just to get it with a pair of pliers, give it a pull, and if it's never been out, it's going to be pretty stiff, so just get ready for that to be pretty solid to get that to move. So it took me a little bit of effort. As you can see, I kind of chipped that corner right there off of it, but it is loose now at this point. And then around the perimeter, there is going to be a total of 5 of these 7mm head bolts. So just remove those 5 bolts. And this splash shield here will come down off of the driver's side. And the reason why we need to remove the splash shield here is there is our drain plug, and it's going to be basically the only bolt head sticking out on the bottom of the transmission case here. But you can see it's up behind that splash shield. So we need to get the splash shield down so we can get up there to the bottom side of the transmission for that drain plug. And now we have access to our drain plug. Now our drain plug is going to be an 11mm. Now, one thing that I want to point out with this transmission while we're draining our fluid is that this transmission does not have a transmission filter that can be accessed. Basically, the way this works is the filter is inside of it, and to get to that transmission filter, you have to split this case in half to get inside of there. So this is definitely a job that you're going to want to stay on top of, because the last thing you want to do is have to pull this transmission out to access that filter. So as long as we're going to keep fresh fluid going through it, we should be in good shape for the lifetime of the transmission. Now we're just down to just a little bit of a drip, or just a very slow, steady stream for our transmission fluid. And one of the things that I totally forgot to mention earlier, completely my fault, that you're probably going to want to have on hand is a thread sealant. And this is the one that I like. It is just the Loctite stick. And so this stuff is pretty inexpensive. You can get decent stuff pretty much any big box store or auto parts store. So I'm going to put just a little bit of thread sealant on this just to make sure that we are all good and sealed up. So basically the way this works is you just kind of wipe it into the threads. I'm going to come back with my rag and just make sure and give it a little wipe down there on the end so that none of it gets up inside the transmission case. I don't think it'll hurt anything, but just want to be safe and kind of double check that, if you will. And so we can go in with our drain plug. And I'm not overly concerned about a torque specification for this, although I know that Ford probably has one, because I'm just using a very small 1/4 inch drive ratchet. So not really much of a chance of over torquing much of anything with this, but I'm just going to get it to where it bottoms out by hand. And leave it at that. Wipe up any excess to make sure we're good and clean so we don't collect dust and dirt on it going down the road. And that should be good for that. So I thought I would measure this out to get me a pretty good idea of what goes back into the 6F50. And so you can see with a gallon container that it is all the way up to the top. And so it's probably actually just over a gallon. Then I still have this left in the bottom of my drain pan. So you can see it's kind of dark, so a lot of the red tint's gone. It's definitely kind of a, I guess, kind of a chocolate brown, or just darker than a chocolate brown color, something like that. Luckily, I don't see any sort of sediment or anything like that moving around in it, so nothing to be really concerned about. But it's definitely dark, definitely time to change it out for sure. So now that we have that measured out, we've looked at our fluid, and we have our drain plug back in place, we're going to go ahead and get our splash shield back up in place. Okay, we're all buttoned up on the bottom side of the transmission. Let's get this thing down and get back up to the top. And just kind of a quick basic tip, if you will, as you go along, go ahead and clean up your dipstick and the little screw piece right there that goes in and around the neck where it goes in, because you can see that it gets pretty nasty just from residual stuff building up on it. So as you put your fluid in, you just don't want debris dropping down the transmission. So I've gone ahead and wiped everything down best I could. And so I'm going to go ahead and go back in with the fluid now. And there we are, just under a quart. So let's go ahead and check it. And so on the dipstick, we're actually just right above the hash marks on cold check. So for me, I'm just going to leave it right there. I don't want to get too carried away and get it all the way up to the top in the hot check, especially being here in the shop with the ambient temperature. It's like 67, 68 degrees right now. So I'm just going to leave it right there. So basically we're just right over 4 quarts. So we did use a little bit of that 5th quart, but actually not much at all. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and put the dipstick back in, and we're going to go ahead and get the top button back up. All right, with their dipstick in, I've gone ahead and just wiped everything down really good for this. Took an air wand, cleaned out the inside of our box, all that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just set this back in there. And one quick tip, what I did is I actually used a little bit of dielectric grease like you would use on like a spark plug boot or something like that. And just put a little drop down there on the end of these rubber isolators or inserts that go down in there. That way, when this thing comes back out, it's not such a struggle to get it out. It's not all froze up down in there. So just a quick tip, a little bit of silicone grease on there or some dielectric grease, and it should come right out. All right, we got our air box all seated up down in the bottom receptacles, and I've got our 7mm started. So we're just going to go ahead and get those cinched down real quick. There's that part. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and remove my paper towels that I stuffed in there a little bit earlier, just because I used the air wand to kind of blow everything out and clean it up. So make sure that no debris gets in our intake. Next up is our air filter. Go ahead and lay that down in place. And for the top of our air box, we're going to go ahead and pop our ductwork in place first. And then we need to get the tabs on the back side back here. I know you can't hardly see that. On the back side of the box, slid down into these tabs. So it has to kind of go down at an angle, and we've clipped into place. And then just our 2 clamps on this side. So just like we unclipped earlier. And then make sure to plug in your IAT sensor back into place. If you've unplugged it, here it snap. Make sure that we tighten down our 2 hose clamps for our ductwork. There's that. And then our engine cover goes on. Okay, so this thing's all buttoned up top. So let's go grab the key and run it through the gears and see how it does. All right, we've got our key, and let's get this thing fired up. I'll let everything boot up for just a second here. Just go to reverse. No problem. I do have wheel chocks under it, so right into neutral and right into drive. Go ahead and drop into sport mode. And you can see we've got first blinking there. Back into drive. We're in neutral. We went into reverse and park. And that completes the transmission fluid change for the 6-speed automatic transmission in the 2018 Ford Sport. So listen, I really do hope you got some good information out of this video, or I hope you just enjoyed hanging out in the shop with us today. So please do me a huge favor. If you haven't already, you know the deal. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. As always, jump in for another ride.